What is happening, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back to review the giant stinking pile of human excrement masquerading as a movie known as Borderlands, based on the popular video game franchise that got started back in 2009. I love that first game. I think I played it through twice. And then for whatever reason, I bailed on the second one. Then I pretty much put Borderlands out of my brain, never to think about it ever again. Although I do recommend that first game. It is very cool. But I wasn't planning on seeing this movie. I'd heard a lot of stories about how there was like a lot of behind-the-scenes problems and a lot of reshoots and budget overruns and all that stuff. And it started to look like one of those movies that Lionsgate was just going to kind of dump on the market and forget about. I was like, all right, well then I'll forget about it too. But then this morning when I got up, I saw it had a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. It didn't last long, but initially it had a 0. I was like, well, that kind of piques my morbid curiosity. Like, how bad could the movie be? And then when I saw the distinguished voice of film criticism known as Grace Randolph chiming in saying how much she liked it, I was like, all right, well, this is a person who was defending Star Wars The Acolyte tooth and nail. Maybe I should go see this movie just to see, like, where is the bottom when it comes to terrible movies? Because we've been treated to a lot of really terrible ones recently. Like, there's different kinds of bad. Like, there's forgettable bad, and there's idiotic bad, and obnoxiously bad, or, like, comically bad. Like, Madam Web was comically bad. I feel like Rebel Moon, the director's cut, that whole obnoxious gimmick about releasing all those different cuts of the movie, that was offensively bad just because once upon a time Zack Snyder did actually make good movies. But Borderlands, what kind of bad is this? I would say for the first 2/3, it's just forgettably bad, like bland, generic, predictable, soulless, but like something that like you watch it and you forget it the moment you've seen it. But then in the final third, it got idiotic bad, so much so that it makes me kind of look back fondly on some movies like Dark Phoenix by Simon Kinberg, because it basically tries to turn it into Dark Phoenix by Simon Kinberg, one of the worst movies that I've ever seen, and Simon Kinberg's name will be mud as far as I'm concerned until the end of time due to that movie. However, I might be inclined to be a little more charitable in my comments about Dark Phoenix now that I've seen the climax to Borderlands. So let's try and say one or two positive things about Borderlands before I proceed to shit on it from a great height. I hope that Cate Blanchett was very well paid. That's not really a compliment to the movie, but I'm assuming for a movie that is rumored to cost about $120 million to make, it's funny, it's one of those movies where it's really expensive, but everything about it still looks and feels really cheap and kind of hastily thrown together. But Cate Blanchett, she's a living legend. I hope she got very well paid. She's better served by movies like Tar, but obviously movies like Tar are not going to allow you to take, like a whirlwind trip around the world, drinking the best wine imaginable with all your friends on a nightly basis. So I hope for like a month or two, Cate Blanchett just partied her face off just to get the experience of Borderlands out of her mind. And as far as being a video game adaptation of a game that I did enjoy, I'd say the first big like opening zone on the world that she's exploring before she gets her big team up, it more or less is directly inspired by the opening zone in the first game. So it's like, all right, at least they were paying attention to some of the work that's been done before and trying to adapt that aesthetic, that look, that feel. But then that's about it, because it's all downhill from there. But the real question is this the kind of terrible movie where people can sit back and laugh their asses off, kind of like laughing at the movie's expense and kind of enjoying the fact that they're watching a complete and total piece of shit? Or is it one of those bad movies that just kind of makes you question all your life choices? Like, how did we get to this point where we're sitting in front of this screen watching this boring, forgettable, generic, predictable story? And I think it more or less leans into the latter category, except for the very end gets into the former category. So if you've got like a weird, like truly sadistic sense of humor where you're willing to subject yourself to an hour of just total misery to get to the point of a movie where you can make fun of it, then I would recommend that you watch Borderlands. And that might apply to maybe 5 or 10 people on the whole planet. Like, yes, I will pay for an overpriced ticket for a terrible movie just so I can get to the even worse ending that my friends and I can make fun of over a few beers after the fact. That is the pitch for Borderlands. But I feel like the real, like in all seriousness, the real test for a video game adaptation is it more fun to watch the movie or show that is based on the game, or is it more fun to play the game? And very, very few movies or shows can kind of pass that test. Like Fallout was very popular on Amazon earlier this year, but I couldn't get through the first episode, not because I didn't enjoy it, but just because as I was watching, I was like, I'd rather be playing Fallout New Vegas or Fallout 4 or any of the Fallout games, and that's precisely what I did. Or you have shows like Arcane, which are very popular. Obviously, The Last of Us had its ups and downs, but at least was like big premium prestige TV based on a popular video game. But this is not one of those kinds of video game adaptations. This feels like it was greenlit or approved like 5 or 6 years ago, and then just reshot and rewritten just over and over and over again until the movie basically like ceased to exist. I'd say it's about as good or as horrible as the Assassin's Creed movie starring Michael Fassbender. And if you've ever played an Assassin's Creed game that you liked, like for me, was it Black Flag is the really good one that I've played. But like, that movie is just a complete and total, I mean, it brings shame and humiliation to everybody involved, including Michael Fassbender. And I almost feel like when he made that movie, it's like, you know what? Maybe being a movie star is not worth it if I have to be, featured in movies like Assassin's Creed. So Borderlands is down there, bottom of the barrel. But I guess the only like real saving grace is that it's not like obnoxiously bad. It's not constantly featuring lines of dialogue and scenes that just make you want to go on a murderous rampage. Like, to put it in perspective, I was sitting there in the theater with one of the most obnoxious crowds imaginable, where they were talking and making phone calls, even like watching videos on their phones for more or less the entire movie. Didn't bother me at all. Like, usually if like a cricket chirps in the corner, I'm like, you will fucking die. Like, I lose my mind. Like, no phones, no talking, and you can only laugh if it's a funny movie. But like, I demand complete and total like worship before the altar of cinema. But with Borderlands, I mean, someone could have thrown a pie at me. Like, I would not have fucking cared. I was just completely, totally over it and resigned to my fate. And I was like, all right, I brought this on myself. I went to the theater. I paid for the ticket, so I've got no one to blame. And I guess I can blame just like I said, my weird morbid curiosity from looking at Rotten Tomatoes and initially seeing a 0, because I can't remember a time where I saw another 0 on Rotten Tomatoes. And there are plenty of movies out there that probably could have earned one. So at this point, you might be well within your rights to ask, what the fuck is Borderlands, and why are you talking about it so much? Well, it's directed by Eli Roth, who once upon a time would make movies that were worth seeing. I mean, he came roaring out of the gate with Cabin Fever, and then obviously Hostel, which made him kind of like, the bad boy of torture porn movies. But recently, he's just been making some really bland, soulless movies. I mean, like his Thanksgiving movie, if you look at the Thanksgiving trailer from Grindhouse and then compare it to the movie adaptation of his own trailer, it's like, oh, let's take all the gore and all the nudity and all the shock value out of it and expand it to feature length, and that's what you get with Thanksgiving. And apparently the shoot for Borderlands was going on so long and had so many reshoots. At one point, he left the shoot to go make Thanksgiving, and then maybe he came back or maybe he didn't. But I'm reading here on Wikipedia that a film adaptation of the video game series was announced in August of 2015. That's 1 year after Guardians of the Galaxy, with Lionsgate developing the project with Ari and Avi Arad producing. And seeing Avi Arad's name in there tells you all you need to know, because while 25 years ago or 20 years ago, he might have been instrumental in playing a role in a lot of comic books being adapted as movies, and he basically was like a huge early figure in getting that comic book craze up and running. But over the last 15 years, I mean, pretty much every single movie he's associated with is just complete and total pig vomit. Let me have a quick look at his career. What has he been doing lately? Kraven the Hunter, coming out in December. The movie looks like total dog shit. Morbius, yet another crowd pleaser, yet another winner. Venom, Let There Be Carnage. Like, this is who Avi Arad is. That is his taste. That's the kind of crap that he makes. But getting back to this post over on Wikipedia, it says, by February 2020, Eric Feig joined as a producer, and Roth was attached to direct the film from a screenplay by Craig Mazin. Craig Mazin, that's actually a pretty big name. He was responsible for Chernobyl and HBO, and he also works on The Last of Us. Principal photography began in April 2021 in Budapest, Hungary during the COVID-19 pandemic and wrapped in June. 2 weeks of reshoots occurred in early 2023, directed by Tim Miller due to Roth's commitments to Thanksgiving 2023. Later in June the same year, Mazin removed his name from the project and was replaced by Joe Crombie. So just from that brief description, I'm getting the sense that this is one of those movies where, over the course of its troubled production history, everybody was saying to themselves, who do I have to fuck to get off of this movie just so I can put it behind me and move on with my life? But the official description of the story over on IMDb is, based on the best-selling video game, this all-star action-adventure follows a ragtag team of misfits on a mission to save a missing girl who holds the key to unimaginable power. And if that sounds really generic and predictable, it's because it is. There's one really obvious twist that gets introduced about halfway through the movie, which you can see coming from a mile away. But whether this movie was trying to be a faithful adaptation of the first game or a carbon copy ripoff of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, what is missing is just the pulse, the soul. Like, all the ingredients that make a movie memorable, like likable characters, memorable lines of dialogue, really cool action scenes, really great music, thrilling set pieces, great dynamic visuals. Like, none of those things are present here. It's just like the actors are sleepwalking through it. And like Jamie Lee Curtis, I mean, Jesus Christ, I've been watching her in movies my entire life. But with this movie and the way she delivers some of her lines, it's almost like she's in like a little competition with herself, saying like, all right, I've been in Halloween Kills and I've been in Halloween Ends, two of the worst films ever made. How can I top that by being even stranger and weirder and just more kind of deranged in my line delivery? I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis. Anyway, if I were her, I would have I would have my lawyers sued. Like, is there any way to get my character just digitally erased from the movie? And then just to add insult to injury, we have a precocious child in this movie. One of those children where every time she speaks, you're like, just can you stick your head out around the corner right when the action starts? Maybe you'll catch a stray bullet. But Ariana Greenblatt as Tiny Tina is so obnoxious. And what she reminded me of was Jake Lloyd in The Phantom Menace. And I know The Phantom Menace has his admirers out there. I am not one of them. And one of the reasons I hate The Phantom Menace is that Jake Lloyd delivers a wooden performance where no matter what he says, it seems to have no bearing on what people around him are saying. Like when an actor's in a scene, they should kind of read the room like, oh, this is kind of the vibe that the ensemble is going for, and I'm going to kind of modulate my performance to fit with the rest. But Jake Lloyd just says his lines in kind of a dead wooden way, irrespective of what like Liam Neeson or Ewan McGregor might be doing. Same thing holds true here with Ariana Greenblatt. Doesn't matter what's going on around her. She just says her lines in the most casual, dismissive, kind of throwaway fashion possible. It's like you're working with Jamie Lee Curtis and Kevin Hart and Cate Blanchett. Like maybe try. Like maybe make a little bit of effort, and this movie might be a little better. So just go ahead and add her to that very long list of child actors who have made very bad movies that much worse. And while we're on the subject of obnoxious characters, we have Jack Black as Claptrap. And in his defense, Claptrap does come from the game, but Claptrap in the game is more or less like a tutorial. He's like, all right, like this is how you shoot your guns, this is how you change between them, this is like how you find your mission objectives, blah, blah, blah. Like in a video game, sometimes you do need a little obnoxious robot to kind of tell you how to play the game. But what you don't need is a little obnoxious robot kind of adding like color commentary throughout the entirety of the movie. But that's what they decided to do. So yeah, if you are annoyed by Jack Black 90% of the time, like the majority of us, you will also be annoyed by his interpretation of the character of Claptrap. But what's abundantly clear while you're watching this movie is that it has no idea what kind of movie that it's trying to be. Like based on the trailer, you would think, okay, I'm hearing Electric Light Orchestra. It wants to be Guardians of the Galaxy. You have like outlaws and misfits teaming up to save the day, so on and so forth. The movie will more or less write itself, and maybe it'll be okay, maybe it'll suck, but whatever. Like we kind of know the drill. But then when you're watching the movie, like all that pop music, it's totally absent. Like you can tell, like in the last year or so, they said, let's just try and like trick people into thinking that it's Guardians of the Galaxy. Maybe some people will go. Like it's just got one of those bland, kind of like serviceable, forgettable scores that I was like, wait a second, like where are like the dope pop tunes? Or maybe Lionsgate just said, you know what? We've already wasted $120 million on this giant piece of shit. We're not paying for a soundtrack. You know, plug in ChatGPT and see what it can come up with. Yeah, but the music's terrible. But like, what's bizarre is how like they're advertising it as this irreverent movie with all these kind of badasses and ne'er-do-wells and outlaws. But then the movie half the time is trying to be really heartfelt and sincere and heartwarming. And it's like, all right, when you have a movie that looks as ridiculous as this and proceeds in such a ridiculous fashion, I'm sorry, asking us to care and like find like the beating heart at the core of the story is a bridge too far. And it just comes across as so thin and so transparent. It's like, now's the time where we want you to feel sad. Like we haven't done any of the work to make you feel sad, but we're hoping maybe we can make you feel sad just a little bit so we can get to the next scene. But it all just feels amateur and slapped together. Like every single scene feels like it was written like 5 minutes before they shot it. And it just feels like the whole thing's being held together by fucking duct tape. And maybe all those paper-thin attempts at emotion would be more forgivable if the movie had some badass, kick-ass action scenes. Not one. Not even like a cool shot where someone's like, strikes a cool pose and does something badass. Like there's not even like split seconds that you can find. And usually even the worst action movie imaginable, you can find little moments like, oh my God, like Jason Statham looks so fucking cool in that. Even if like the movie was terrible, like you can find like that one little sliver. Not one sliver. Like, and it's always like unmotivated acrobatics that actually don't do anything to like help you. Like Cate Blanchett, like you see it in the trailer and you see it in the movie. People are shooting at her and she like rolls over a bunch of crates to look cool, but then she stops in the middle of the roll and fires off like 6 shots while she's not moving, and then she proceeds to roll again. It's like, well, it would have been really cool if you were shooting as you were rolling, because then you're dodging at the same time. But right now all you've done, you're just lying flat on the crates at a disadvantageous angle, making yourself like more of a target and having like worse aim as a result. Once again, just unmotivated action beats that just like, in theory, they're supposed to look cool, but they just make the whole movie feel fucking stupid. And I guess if I had to call attention to one scene in the trailer that kind of captures the entire tone and style of the entire movie, that scene in the trailer where they're driving through that giant swamp of like pee and poop and that sort of thing, and of course the little girl with the stupid bunny ears like, I want my window down, and gang, 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 gang.
Put the window up.
I don't want to. Roll the window up.
Of course, pee goes in her mouth, everybody starts screaming at each other, but it's just so boring and so headache-inducing. And yeah, I'm starting to realize maybe I'm being too polite by like kind of going point by point and like summing up all the things that this movie does poorly, because I don't think anybody's going to go see this movie. I think Lionsgate is going to lose their ass on it. Like, this is $120 million. It's going to go poof, up in smoke. If it makes even $10 million on its opening weekend, I would be fucking shocked and amazed. And it's just bizarre. Like, Lionsgate, once upon a time, seemed to care when they were making a sizable investment. Like, they're not Disney. They're not Warner Brothers. They can't necessarily afford to just piss away $120 million. If they invest $100 million in a movie, usually it's like John Wick Chapter 4, and they've kind of worked their way up to it. Clearly, they thought, oh, we've got a hit game, and we've got the right, like the style, right style and right approach. But this is just a complete and total, just cataclysmic creative misfire across the board. And in a year that's already had so many terrible movies like Rebel Moon, or movies like Madam Web, we just add Borderlands to the mix of the unwatchable movies of 2024 that make it feel like the entire movie industry is going down in flames all around us. And just to put how atrocious this movie is in perspective, at one point I left to go to the bathroom, and when I came back, I went into the wrong theater. It was two small theaters side by side, but I sat down, I looked, I was like, something feels off or weird, because I was seeing all these like weird purple lights, and it felt like it might be a scene in Borderlands, but then I saw Zachary Levi, and I was like, wait a second, I think this is that purple crayon movie. So I got up and left, but like, it was like, that's a sign of just how bad Borderlands is, that you could watch a terrible scene from yet another terrible movie, but it feels like it might be like a strange way, and like a strange puzzle piece that would kind of fit into Borderlands. Who knows, maybe there is a movie experience to be had there where you play both movies side by side and you just like kind of turn on the soundtrack to whichever one you're interested in at that given moment. But I guess the silver lining in all of this is that when you see a truly unwatchable giant piece of shit, it makes good movies seem that much better. Like on Saturday, I'm going to be recording a video with my buddy David Lambert about the 50th anniversary of Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia, made by Sam Peckinpah. And it's not even one of Sam Peckinpah's best movies, but like, you know, compared to a movie like Borderlands, it's just an absolute work of art from start to finish. So I do think it's worth it every once in a while to subject yourself to a movie where you just want to projectile vomit and projectile diarrhea at the same time, not even necessarily out of the right orifice, but just basically just like explode pure poison in all directions, just to kind of like, you know, get the experience out of your system. So like I said, if you're morbidly curious, go check it out. But if you've got $20 to spend it on anything, and it's probably a better use of your cash than going to see Borderlands. Like, drive down down the highway and just throw it out the window and just see what happens. That'll be a better use of your hard-earned money. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Hope you enjoyed it on some level. I'll be very curious to see which critics continue to basically sacrifice their credibility at the altar of praising Borderlands. More power to people. Like, you know, like what you want to like, praise what you want to praise, but then people get to judge you, and they get to remember, like, you're that person that likes Star Wars: The Acolyte, or you're that person that likes Borderlands. I'm just going to tuck that away for future reference. So just to, in case I haven't made it abundantly clear, I did not like Borderlands. And on that note, I'm going to wrap this sucker up. Hope you enjoyed the video. Please remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that good stuff. Hope everyone has a great weekend at the movies, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.